Thank you, friends, for your patience. We were waiting for our video audio system to start. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Port Washington's Common Council meeting for Wednesday, August 6, 2025. All Alder persons are present. Mr. Gasper is joining us by phone tonight. Before we begin the meeting tonight, I want to honor former Alderperson John Sigwart for his community service and service. John passed away earlier this week, and I'd like to just take a moment of silence before we begin the meeting. Thank you. Please join with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, at this time, if there's anyone who would like to make public comments, please remember that public comments can be made. Public comments can be made, and they can be made for up to 3 minutes. So anyone who would like to make public comments? Anyone who'd like to make public comments? Anyone who'd like to make public comments? All right, seeing none, that'll move us into the consent agenda. Is there someone willing to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Alderman Postel, Alderman Newmeyer, moved and seconded. Any questions or concerns on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, that brings us into mayor's business. I'm going to start out with B there, mayor's updates. I just want to thank the Port Washington Police Department for sponsoring the night out last night, and Noah and all of the different organizations that were supportive. It was very cool to see downtown alive on a random Tuesday night in August with people celebrating law enforcement in our wonderful community. And Alderman Newmeyer made it very clear that the hot dogs were amazing. They were. So thank you for that. And just a reminder that we've got a lot of great things going on in the city of Port Washington. Farmers Market coming up this weekend and every weekend for a couple of weeks yet. So please make sure to participate in that. With that then, under mayor's business tonight, we're going to do a presentation regarding the status of the negotiations related to the developers agreement with Vantage Data Centers. But I'm going to begin with kind of a quick historical review of kind of where we're at, what we've done, and the diligence that we've done as both a council and a community and city. So if we could flip it over. I'm going to start out with a picture of my favorite rock. So if you've never seen Mile Rock on the beach in Port Washington, you're not a native. So that's just a quick picture of downtown. But really what I wanted to talk about was kind of where we got in the past, where we are today, and then where we're heading tomorrow with our new partner on the north side of Port Washington. So we're going to review the history, look at the current state, discuss the diligence taken, look at the future state, and then get into the developer agreement details. Our attorney, Chris Smith, will be handling those different components. Just so the community knows and our audience knows, the developers agreement will be posted in the next few days on our website for community consumption review. The council is not taking any action on the developers agreement this evening. Tonight was our way of being as proactive as possible with the community through the negotiation process to ensure that everyone and anyone could take a look at that and give us feedback before the council potentially takes it up for consideration, discussion, and a vote on August 19th. So what is the history of the project and where did this come from? So over a year ago, a combination of state and regional economic development corporations, M7, MMAC, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, had began to potentially look at a site north of the city of Port Washington, and they were working with a realtor group to put land, privately owned lands under contract for the potential opportunity to take up to 1,900 acres and develop that. They were looking, the state of Wisconsin was looking for the opportunity to draw in an overseas manufacturing plant that was focused on technology, and Port Washington was not chosen for that project. However, as a result of that, Port Washington not being a finalist for that project, those 1,900 acres continued to be under contract for a set amount of time. So when we got the phone call, like I've said before, Port Washington, we don't lose, we learn. We started asking a lot of questions. Why weren't we chosen? What would we have had to be doing? What would we have had to have been ready for? What conditions did we needed to create? And then we walked through all those and we asked the question, so then what else can we do? At that point, M7, who is the economic development arm of the MMAC in southeastern Wisconsin, said, well, we could work together and kind of reimagine the possibilities. As you can imagine, being in our seats as elected officials, having adopted a strategic plan a few years ago, looking for ways to diversify our valuation as a city, we really wanted to see what we could do. As a matter of fact, I remember when I ran for mayor saying on my virtual presentation that if the Honda Motor Company came and they wanted to build a Honda Motor plant here, like we would work hard to get them so that we could have that diversified tax base. So what criteria was put into place? So after we had that conversation about all those different pieces, we had a discussion of like, okay, so if we could draw someone in, what would we want to make sure that they did? So number one was we wanted to focus on limiting the impact on the region. We learned with the opportunity for this potential technology manufacturing partner that it was significant needs for water. There was going to be pollution. We would have to buy, or the state and the company would have to buy what are called clean air credits. When you put manufacturing in the state of Wisconsin, because of the way the winds work, most of the dirty air that we get in Wisconsin is actually coming from south central of the United States. And as a result, you cannot add manufacturing or pollutants to the state. So you have to have clean air credits. We had put out there really quickly, we wanted a limited impact on the region. We didn't want to have to redo interstates. We didn't want to have to do significant amounts of water. And we certainly didn't want any air pollution. We also wanted to focus on creating revenue for the city to offset the fact that Port Washington for the last 40 years has focused really on residential and slight commercial development. And all of our tax base is really leaning onto homeowners. That focus on revenues and jobs and infrastructure that would improve our north side so that if there was a project there, that it would allow for and support the development moving north on what is the east side of Highway LL and those private properties where there are developers who want to support it, as well as a regional impact. And when I say regional impact, we wanted to bring in someone who would support the trades, our infrastructure, our public schools, not just in the Port Washington-Saukville School District, but Northern Ozaki, Cedar Grove, Belgium, and yes, even Grafton. Dramatic pause was intentional. And then the other piece that we put in there was we wanted to ensure that they protected all of our natural resources, air, water, and Lake Michigan. So when that was put out there, that really limited and created a strong structural box for us. It eliminated any heavy manufacturing, medium manufacturing, and really put us in the business of drawing in potentially warehousing. When we talked about warehousing, I used to work in a community that had a significant amount of warehousing. That does not bring a lot of valuation. It is not consistency. It doesn't employ a lot of people. And frankly, at this part of the state of Wisconsin on I-43 with no eastern market, there's not a need for regular warehousing. So the next best thing is computer warehouses, known as data centers. And then the final piece that we put in place was we wanted to avoid impacting the downtown or any of our traditional neighborhoods. So Port Washington has the opportunity, obviously, with the old Simplicity site, the old Bolin site, and some of the old manufacturing places that have been left abandoned and have been reimagined, but we did not want to bring anything into the actual existing city. So we wanted to finally seek something that was a sustainable industry and option, and that's how we got to a data center. So the data center was identified as a match for our criteria, and with the help of M7, the WEDC, and We Energies, we continued to look at what the opportunities were for significant development. Cloverleaf was then interviewed. We brought them in. They came to Port Washington about a year ago, or a little over a year ago, and had the discussion of what they would do. So Cloverleaf is a development company that acquires the real estate, preps the site, supports the community, puts everything in a position, and then they find an end user. And then they had done a bidding process, brought in multiple different data center groups that we had met with, and they had landed on and worked with Vantage. Cloverleaf took over that site property, and this is just the history, but through their own process, they landed on Vantage and sold that to Vantage, and Vantage has been closing on those properties. And tonight, we will be annexing many of them into the city of Port Washington. They will be identifying their clients in the coming months for that center as well. So why did we do this? The first thing is to be strategic. We went to the Port Washington, our library at the Niederkorn Library 3.5 years ago, sat in a room, brought in community stakeholders, identified our values, looked at what we wanted to do, said we wanted to be very smart about development. One of the things we promised ourselves in the community was that we would never put in place a developer's agreement that gave the advantage to the developer. We would never, again, go into a position where we had to finance for the developer. Port Washington in the last 2 decades has had a history of some good relationships, some bad relationships. Now, most of those were residential developments and some commercial, but all of them had like advantages for the developers. So we said we wanted to be strategic about that. We also said that we wanted to make sure that we could identify and diversify a need for diversely zoned areas of the city and then develop the city of Port Washington. Right now, as we're going to look at, 80 cents on the dollar of all of our levied tax goes to people who own homes on Walter Street and all over the city of Port Washington. So we wanted to diversify that. And there's that fact that we keep coming back to, which there's an undue burden on the homeowner in the city of Port Washington, and that will only continue to grow unless we chose to do something, which we did. And then historically, something that a lot of people who are new to Port Washington, and I remember my dad always saying, I'll never be considered from Port Washington because I moved here from Cedarburg. And if you weren't born here or you're a Luxembourger, nobody considers you from here. So history gets lost. And one of the things that I recall, and I think any older members of our community, especially when I went to the senior center, they brought up was the fact that we've lost manufacturing and we're heading towards a significant operating deficit as a city if we just continue to maintain our focus on being a tourist-based commercial downtown and residential community without an employer. Most of the people who live in Port Washington, we export our labor to the Milwaukee area, the West Bend area, the Sheboygan area. People go north, west, and south. And we don't have a major employer that with a significant amount of labor who lives in town. This would provide us that potential with no guarantees. So how do we demonstrate diligence? One is that's the worst selfie of me ever, standing on the roof of a Vantage data center in Virginia. I flew out to Virginia and we did the diligence. We were challenged in this room by people to go visit them, and we did. So the first thing we did was we put in place a pre-development agreement that brought on consultative experts, allowing the city to be proactive and maintain significant influence and control of the project. We did that at no cost to ourselves. We created strict zoning codes that are really nationally benchmarked. Sam, our consultant, along with Bob Harris, our director of planning, worked together to put in place zoning codes that are very restrictive with strong setbacks. And as you'll see in the development agreement and the potential maps, I can only speak for myself, but very pleased with the reintroduction of wetlands onto that property, the setbacks off of the bike path, and just the respectful way in which Vantage is taking advantage of our zoning codes to ensure that their project enhances that area while changing it. And finally, we did do interviews. Our fire chief is here tonight. He has talked to fire station executives both in Wisconsin and out of Wisconsin, and our police department has done the same, and our city administration has been working closely with Mount Pleasant so that we can learn from their wisdom. And finally, just to throw it in there, I did go visit Mount Pleasant. I walked the Microsoft site. I drove through the Beaver Dam site. I know one of our councilmen has done that as well. And then I went to Northern Virginia, which is called Data Center Valley, and toured two Vantage data centers, VA11 and VA12, and then got a tour of the whole region to see what they all looked like. And I said it the last time, and I'll say it again, I think the Vantage data centers are respectfully designed. I think that their internal technology, their lack of use of water, they're quiet. They're everything that we would want as a partner in the city of Port Washington. So how are we different from other projects? Because this keeps coming up. We are is completely local and led by the city. So we don't have partners with the county, the state. We don't have interwoven agreements. We are not sharing water. Some people have been comparing us to some projects in the southeastern part of the state. We're nothing like that. This is literally the city of Port Washington working with the support of our legislators in the state, but not leaning into them. Tonight, when we look at the three options that the city had explored, you'll see one of the main reasons why we don't want to get intertangled with the county or the state, and that's that shared debt that we would have to do with them. Which then leads to, how does this financially benefit Port Washington? Well, the first thing is this is immediate investment in existing businesses in Port Washington. Vantage has already reached out and met with many of our community stakeholder groups. I'm very proud of the fact that they've met with our schools. They're going to start meeting individually with the different nonprofits. They're going to start to meet. I'll bring them together with business owners here in the month of September. And they've done a very good job trying to increase their community presence as well as their relationships. And they sponsored part of Fish Day. So if there's any extra points, that would be one of them for sure. This also brings a significant infrastructural improvement to the city of Port Washington on the north side. that would potentially be in that tax incremental district at no cost to the citizens of the city. So we would not be bonding for that infrastructure for residents. We would not have other developers have to ask for TIDs or TIFs to get infrastructure brought out to their properties. And that positions landowners on the northeast side of Port Washington who have for years wanted to build residential neighborhoods north of Allen Edmonds. It puts them in a position where they can potentially execute on their own plans with their families and their partners. In 2 to 5 years, as you're going to hear tonight, the city's valuation is going to increase significantly. It will increase up to $120 million, which will decrease potentially taxes for homeowners, commercial property owners, and industry within the city of Port Washington. $120 million is a significant amount of valuation increase, and actually equals probably the last decade plus of new development in the city of Port Washington. So the biggest piece is that in the future, as we're going to hear about tonight, because the TID could take up to 20 years to close, but in the next decade plus, we could start to see a significantly different tax base for the city of Port Washington, the tax burden share. And while I'm talking just about the city tonight, that up to $120 million valuation that hits us, that does not just benefit the city property taxes. That benefits the school district tax base. That benefits the MATC tax base. That benefits county tax base as well. So that valuation gets spread over every levying entity in our area, which then leads me to a very important piece when you talk about continuous improvement. So one of the things I wanted to make sure that we all knew and we all saw, going back to being strategic, is the current state is that 80% of our tax base comes from homeowners in the city, and we do not have major multiple employers in town. The desired state in the green is that by 2035, potentially, and again, this isn't a promise, this is a desired state, that 25% of the tax base comes from homeowners and the tax base is diversified so that Port Washington can sustain, be strong stewards of our infrastructure, and proactively meet our needs of a growing community. Milwaukee is a changing region. We are no longer a sovereign city. We are the new North Shore in the city of Port Washington. We are a desirable community. There are services that are expected when you are a desirable community. We have one last hurdle to cross. We've addressed almost all of our infrastructural things. And the last thing we have to do is put in place a highly respectful community center for our seniors in our community. And that doesn't just happen. So the steps to get there to that desired state within the decade or longer would be to retain current commercial and industrial investments. And the only way to be able to do that is to bring in some other people who are going to spend money. And for the next 6 to 8 years through this construction process and this development, everything in Port Washington is going to be busy. I joked with Mr. Drews at Drews True Value that he's going to be the busiest True Value on the planet. Our McDonald's is going to be very busy. Our hotels are going to be busy. Our restaurants are going to be busy. People who come to work here through the different trade groups or different ownership groups are likely going to bring their families here to stay here, or they're going to move here. And then the jobs created and the different companies that come here will move here as well. I've already been in contact and put different groups in touch with realtors in town who want to start to rent spaces for offices. And a lot of our vacant properties in downtown will very likely be filled with the contractors, the company, and then their subcontractors are looking for that space in the short and long term. So that would be the ideal state. Now, when it says of their desired state, that doesn't mean that's going to happen. I'd just like to really make that clear. That doesn't mean that's going to happen. That's where we'd really like to go. And if we could position our homeowners to be in that spot, that would be to their significant advantage. I'm going to take a breath and ask if there's any questions or clarification from council before I go into the last 2 slides and then turn it over to our attorney. Okay. All right. So the last 2 things then that I want to show you is this poster is going to go all over town. It will be on our website tomorrow. Working with our consultant on communications, what we did was we asked to put together a graphic organizer that went through what are the 3 options that the city reviewed, how did we get to the conclusions that we're going to be reviewing tonight, and what's in it for you as a resident of the city of Port Washington. So that will be available starting tomorrow morning or the next day on our website. We'll put it on our city Facebook page. and we will be hanging this in all of our municipal buildings in town. But we really wanted to make sure that in the next 2 weeks, community members could do their diligence, review those pieces, and know that we did look at everything that was brought to us over the course of the last 6 months. So option one was make Vantage pay for this all on their own. We heard that over and over and over again. Vantage is a $1 billion company. They should pay for this on their own. Okay, so let's look and see what that would do. That would take Wisconsin out of the running for any future development. Every state, every county, every city has some sort of different incentives or different ways in which they can support the infrastructural improvements so that companies, businesses, residences can be built there. It would be highly unlikely that anyone would come to Port Washington and say, yep, we'll take on all the risk, we'll take on all the cost, and we'll pay for your stuff as well. That's just very unlikely. Option two, don't do a TID and have the city finance it. I'm going to give you some of the details on that. We did the diligence. Ehlers ran a really nice graph for me that showed exactly what that would mean for us as taxpayers if we were to finance this. Because the infrastructural improvement cost is up to $175 million. I'm going to say it one more time. It's up to $175 million. If the city were to try to bond for that debt, we would have to lean into the state of Wisconsin and Ozaukee County to secure those bonds. And I'm going to talk to you about what that means. But if we were to do that, next year property taxes would go up. The year after that, they would go up significantly. The year after that, they'd go up significantly until the evaluation of this whole project were on board, which could take up to a decade. There would not be tax relief. The city, the people who live here would be paying significant amounts of money. Some years up to $550 to $560 more dollars per year on a $350,000 home. So that was pretty rapidly eliminated once we did the math, which brings us to option three, which will be discussed in the developers agreement tonight, which is to create TID 5 and potentially put the city of Port Washington in a position with Vantage as our partner to do the infrastructural improvements on their dime at no risk to the city of Port Washington. So we're going to get into that in a second. I'm going to turn it over to Chris. So I just wanted to go over this one more time. So for the city of Port Washington, if we were to cover all of the infrastructural costs, these are all estimates. I'm going to say it again. These are all estimates. If $175,000 worth of infrastructure would need to be done and the city were to pay for it, we would have to bond for a 30-year term. That far exceeds our ability to lend or to be borrowed money or to bond for it. This would create a significant projected increase in property taxes. In 2027, after the years of all of the property taxes included, a $350,000 home would go up $718 in those 2 years for property taxes. The years between 2036 and 2046, there's an average of a $500 a year per year increase in property taxes if the city were to take on this risk. The city cannot bond for this amount, so we'd have to ask for assistance from the county or the state. And then this risk is so significant that we don't even know if we'd ever realize the valuations. And when we did realize the valuations, it could be generations of councils later. So if we were to bond $175 million for 30 years, the cost to taxpayers for the payback is $305.9 million. That does not make sense. But I want to make sure that everyone understands we did the diligence. We asked the questions because we didn't want to just jump in and see what we were going there. Again, if Vantage covers all the costs, this takes all options off, and nationally, every state's recognized, has significant incentives for companies to locate within their states. Iowa, for instance, doesn't have any taxes on new development as they come in, and they've got a window there of time. So under the blue there, the city creates a tax incremental district, and Vantage reimburses all infrastructural costs, which is known as a pay-as-you-go TID. This creates what we will be reviewing tonight, which is a contract or a developer's agreement with Vantage. Vantage accepts all responsibility for the infrastructural costs. Vantage absorbs the risk. Vantage guarantees payback. Vantage is responsible for executing expectations of that developer's agreement that identifies all the criteria for the TID, which Mr. Smith's going to talk about in a second. We create TID 5. We worked with the legislators to be able to create TID 5 without it impacting other TIDs in the city. And then we will negotiate for the best possible outcome and this would support an up to 20-year payback on that TID. I get to now listen to Mr. Smith, but does anyone else have any questions for me before I turn it over?
One thing, Ted,
yes.
If you could emphasize the up to 20-year payback. It's 20 years is not a given, it's up to.
Correct. So TIDs in the state of Wisconsin are always up to 20 years. And we have no way to forecast exactly when the paybacks would be. So I really appreciate that, Alderperson Postel. And then the other piece that I really want people to recognize is that in the pay-as-you-go, the faster that the southern end which is being developed, it's only the southern end of the property which is being developed in this first phase, is that as soon as that valuation comes on, that's when what is known as increment starts to be created, and that's when the TID starts to get paid back. So the quicker the city works, the better off position we are in. And in a moment, we're going to hear Mr. Smith, who did a great job in working with Vantage. We would potentially be beginning that TID a little bit later so that we could bring on the value of the property that Vantage has now purchased onto our valuation so that we can begin relieving the tax base of the city of Port Washington. All right, Mr. Smith, you want to plug in? Thank you, everyone, for your grace on that presentation. Bob or Rob, can one of you guys grab this for him, please? Thanks, Eric. So as Chris plugs in, we're going to let Chris go through the whole piece, and then council, if we have any questions for clarification for him. Otherwise, our guests tonight, if you want to, we'll leave this with you. You can take that if you want to review that graphic organizer that was put together. All right, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the Common Council. So I'm just going to set the stage for where we are in this negotiation with Vantage. I've had guidance from the Common Council. We've had past closed sessions where the council has directed me as far as negotiating points, and I've taken that guidance and met with representatives of Vantage, and we have gotten to a point now where we have a draft development agreement that we believe is close enough to a final development agreement that it's ready to be shared with the public for public consumption and review. And while the agreement does not complete, we think the main structure of the deal is pretty close to complete. There will be likely some relatively minor changes between now and August 19th. I do not expect those to be substantive. I expect those to be wordsmithing type changes. There may be some typos in there that we have not caught yet, but it's close enough. And from the Common Council's perspective, we're close enough to believe we will have a final version for consideration on August 19th. So today, I would like to just go through some of the major points of the development agreement to give some clarity on how the actual deal would work with Vantage. And I will say one of the first things you'll notice if you're reviewing the development agreement, the draft that we have right now, is a placeholder, because we're not ready yet to be able to say with great certainty what Vantage's total investment in the city is going to be. Vantage is still crunching the numbers. Obviously, a lot goes into this number over a great number of years of construction. So Vantage is still calculating that. But what we're talking about here is what is the total cost. Geez, I must have been boring. I'll try to spice it up a little bit. But what we're talking about here, when you look at this draft and you're seeing this blank space, a TBD type placeholder, is the amount of money that Vantage intends to invest into Port Washington. And like I said, they're still calculating this. But I think what's very important for everyone to realize, and I know the Common Council understands it, but it's important for the public to understand this too, that total spend, total investment does not equal what their assessment is going to be. Obviously, their assessment is a very important number because, as we all know, whatever your assessment is, plays a big role on what your tax bill is. And as we will talk about a little later in the presentation, what Vantage's tax bill is crucial to the economics of this whole deal. But I just want to caution everyone, whatever that number might be, that includes things that are not taxable. We do not have personal property tax anymore in the state of Wisconsin. Data centers obviously spend a ton of money on the equipment that goes inside the building. That's not taxable, okay? But I just wanted to point that out because I'm sure as people review and digest this draft of a development agreement, they're going to wonder, why is this number not there, okay? And it's just simple fact, it's still being worked on. So getting into the deal structure itself, I will just say that the first time I addressed this council in 2024, and we talked about getting into a pre-development agreement and having to enter into negotiations with the town of Port Washington so we could annex property, the number one mandate that I was given by the council and the thing that I said right away is the city was not going to pay for any of this work that we're doing. And that has been true. And I will say that theme has flowed right through into the development agreement, okay? Because as the mayor said, the public infrastructure improvements, and that includes water main extensions, sanitary sewer extensions, upgrades to current facilities and infrastructure, road improvements and extensions. All of these things we are estimating to cost up to $175 million. And Vantage is going to pay for that, okay? And they're going to pay for that upfront, all right? So unlike deals that the mayor referenced to the south where, and frankly, common deals of this nature where the government is financing this and then getting repaid through the revenue, the tax revenue of the project, here it's completely different. Vantage is paying upfront for everything. And when I say everything, I mean the $175 million, which was estimated in public infrastructure costs to extend sewer and water, road extension repair, water and sewer infrastructure, existing infrastructure upgrades that are necessary if we want to provide utilities to the site to the appropriate level, but also any other city costs related to this project. That includes, if you recall, way back in 2024, we entered into an agreement with the town of Port Washington, where the town is getting a payment for the next 5 years. Vantage is going to pay that. The town is also going to have utilities extended into a certain area known as Canalsville. Vantage is going to pay for that. All the outside consulting costs, because obviously internal city staff have full-time jobs. They had full-time jobs before this project. They continue to have those full-time jobs, and it is absolutely impossible to expect the city staff to be able to take on a project of this size and scope. And so the city has brought on outside legal, planning, engineering, financial, communications, all these consultants from a number of different firms that have experience in dealing with projects of this size and scope. And so all of those costs as well, Vantage is paying for. So then the next question, why do we need a TID? Okay, Vantage is paying for everything up front. Why do we need a TID? It goes exactly to the mayor's presentation because expecting any company to pay up to $175 million in public infrastructure costs without getting reimbursed it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen because any company will find a city in a state where they would have at least that type of incentive. So we need a TID because Vantage will get reimbursed with interest for these costs, okay? Or at least I should say they have an opportunity to be reimbursed for these costs. I say opportunity because there's only one source of funds for these reimbursements, and that is that tax revenue that Vantage itself generates. Okay, so that's why we need a TID to make sure, and I've said this multiple times in this room, that the TID will shield the rest of these city taxpayers from any of these costs. Okay, Vantage is paying it, and once Vantage starts to build and they get their assessment and then they get their tax bill, from those funds, they can start to get paid back. The faster they build, the more value they may create, the faster they get paid back. So again, we have the TID creates a shield to make sure that the only taxpayer paying for these costs is Vantage. Additionally, beyond the up to 175 million, we're saying up to 175 million because these are estimates. We are doing our best to estimate high because we don't want to estimate low. So we look at the 175 million as a worst case scenario. Vantage will also be reimbursed for its substation that is going to be installed on the site. The reason for that is it is something that the Common Council and I have looked at, and by creating the substation on this site, we have a very valuable site then. We have one that is very likely to develop into a high valuation use. And so Vantage has the opportunity to recoup the costs for the power substation on its site that will help run the We Energies power to the actual buildings. And those are the reimbursements that Vantage gets through this deal. Now the question is, well, what if they don't build fast enough? What if they don't create enough value with this project? What if their tax bill, in other words, is low enough, is too low, and these reimbursements, they won't get, enough revenue generated to reimburse them for these costs? Well, the answer is then they won't get reimbursed. That's the consequence. So again, to compare it to other deals that have occurred and frankly are common, the city is not the one holding the bag here if the project does not create the value that we hope it will. Vantage is the one holding the bag because they won't get paid back because they're fronting all the money to pay for everything. Another way to look at this is if you were given the option to take out a home equity loan on your property, and you pay the bank back on this loan over the course of a certain term, and in this case, the maximum amount of term we would have is 20 years, because that's the length of a TID in Wisconsin that we're using here. Basically, you pay what you can, and when the term ends, everything else, the balance is just forgiven. That's what we have here. Now, the intent is Vantage will build. They'll build on the schedule that they intend. They'll create enough incremental revenue, which just means the new revenue created in the TID, that it'll pay them back. And that's what we hope happens. But the bottom line is we've protected the city from risk because they're the ones fronting the money. They are financing everything. And if the value is not there, they just don't get paid back. So, in addition to the obvious benefits when the TID closes. I mean, when the TID closes, obviously you have this huge newly valued property that's now hitting the general tax roll, the school district, the county, and MATC. That's obvious. But since we've started this process, I have heard a message loud and clear from the council, from members of the public, like Port Washington needs financial help in the short term. Like 20 years is wonderful, or however long the TID takes, but we need something to help us now. And so we believe this agreement has answered that question. And the first benefit that the city will receive in the short term is exactly what we talked about with that up to $175 million in public infrastructure costs. Not all of that solely benefits Vantage or the project site. A very large part of it is going to benefit the city's water and sewer utility as a whole, which means it benefits those users as a whole. And I would just like to introduce Claude Loyce, who is project manager for Kapoor and Associates, and he's just going to touch on a couple of the general benefits to the city's water and sewer systems as a whole that we're going to realize by this project.
Thank you, Attorney Chris Smith. Again, working, Claude Loyce with Capone Associates, working with obviously the city staff, Robin, Roger, and then their engineers that you have locally already, Strand and Santic on your city water and wastewater facilities. We went through everything and looked at every possible scenario here. Not only to make sure we can protect the city for today, but make sure 20 years from now, you can still continue to grow. And infrastructure, you have the capability to continue to grow when these projects go underway. So we have, again, as been mentioned, up to $175 million worth of infrastructure improvements to your system, to the city's system. So most of those are going to be kind of upgrading for like a water-wise. It's going to be, your facility is 30 years old or more. So it's just upgrading a lot of those parts that are in that current facility, upgrading them, new technology, more efficient, more effective, better to run, easier to run, and more efficient to run. Same thing with your sewer. We have some issues there as well. And then we're also going to, to get what Vantage is looking for their needs, for their site, we also then will have to upgrade a number of your pipes downstream. In other words, make them bigger. They'll be too small. So all of this is factored into the $175 million, or up to $175 million of infrastructure costs. So again, at the end of the day, every one of these things will benefit the city of Port's residents long-term. And again, give you the capability to continue to grow, doesn't stop anything and doesn't hurt anything with the new development that Vantage is bringing to your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Claude. So the point is, one of the short-term benefits that the community will see relatively quickly is this work to upgrade your sewer system and water system. And yes, is this necessary to provide what Vantage needs for sewer and water? It is. But does it also benefit everyone in the city that uses the sewer and water facilities? Absolutely. And Vantage is paying for all those upgrades. One thing, when you are reviewing the draft development agreement, there's an exhibit that lists all the different repairs, upgrades, extensions that make up this $175 million estimate. One thing you will not see in there is any type of construction or extension or anything, creation of a pipe going from Lake Michigan straight to Vantage's site, okay? The reason that is not included in that as exhibit is because there are no plans for that. This project will operate off of the current city water system. So I know there's been talks in the community about sucking water out of Lake Michigan. That's not what is planned here, and that's why you will not see it in there. This is the $175 million is intended to extend the current municipal water and sewer system and also upgrade and repair where needed. The second short-term benefit to the city is, Vantage's project. And when we're talking about the project, we're talking about the south phase. You will see a map in there. There's a north phase and a south phase. We're talking only about the south phase right now. And that is because that is what Vantage is building now. And the square footage of the buildings that are planned to be built are significant. And the city has impact fees. The city has building permit fees. Much like the Microsoft development in Racine County, those fees add up. And when you're talking, because they're calculated per square foot. And we're estimating these fees are going to be in the millions as Vantage pulls permits to build. And so again, this is something that will hit the city's coffers in the short term, which will help. I mean, you can't tell me, is there a lot of complications on how you use money and levy limits and restricted funds, things like that? Of course there are. And the city has very good staff to figure out and very good elected officials to oversee But no one will ever convince me that more revenue is a bad thing for the city.
Chris, before you move on, if I don't mind interrupting,
Please.
can you talk to me about those revenues that you just mentioned, what the impact on the water sewer rates would be to the existing homeowners, and what their usage and revenue that Vantage would create would mean for the taxpayer, the current residents of Port Washington?
Well, I mean, impact fees are different than the water rates. So, obviously, Vantage, while they're not using, I think, what I would call a disruptive amount of water, like historically we know some data centers across the country have used, they'll still sell a significant amount of, or the city will sell a significant amount of water. That will help the utility generate revenue. Same with the wastewater rates for Vantage. But as far as the impact fees go, that is something that can be used to pay for, and again, city staff will come up with a plan on how to use them, but they can use to support things like police and fire. And obviously, every dollar that comes in from an impact fee is a dollar you don't have to use somewhere else, or is a dollar that you don't have to charge somewhere else. So,
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
That very good answer, and it sparked another piece for clarification. The wondering is, will the average homeowner, as a result of this infrastructural increase cost in the TID, or will the average homeowner, as a result of the water usage, I mean, and I don't know that if Claude or somebody can speak to that, but will they feel an impact? Like, will Megan and I have a water increased rate as a result of Vantage? I know that's hard to predict, but in other communities, does that happen?
I mean, no today. Again, those are still some of the things that we'll work out through. But understand, would you, if all these infrastructures were paid by you folks? Yes, you would. No, but they're all being paid by Vantage. So, honestly, sir, it shouldn't affect your rates at all.
Okay.
Again, I don't know what your structure is. That would be more for a staff as far as if you're on a 3-year plan or whatever it might be to look at your rates. But yeah, we are not looking zero is what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Just one quick follow-up, and just to make sure everybody understands, those impact fees and other local permit fees, they're not going in the TID. They're going into our pocket right away, and that's not going to be used for reimbursement to Vantage, correct?
Yeah, I'm very glad you clarified that, because that's my point in saying benefits to the city in the short term. When, this is beyond, like I said, the benefit of when the TID closes. So these impact fees are outside of the TID. That's why it could benefit the city's budget now in the short term. And just going back to the water rates, I mean, just, using my own common sense, all the upgrades and installation Vantage is paying for, so that would not be shared by any other ratepayer. Once they're using water, obviously they have to pay for their use. So that's not going to get shared by any ratepayer. So to my knowledge, there's not going to be any type of increase to the average ratepayer because of what we're talking about today. Finally, and this was, I think, a major benefit to the city, especially when we're talking about the goal of getting some short-term financial relief. Vantage has agreed with keeping the value of the land that they have purchased, which is about $120 million in value, outside of the TID. What does that mean? That means, unlike revenue that's generated within the TID, which is used to reimburse them for all the costs, that $120 million of value is going to remain outside of the TID in perpetuity. So the city, school district, county, and MATC will be able to capture that new revenue outside of the TID, starting with the assessment of January 1st, 2026. So that is not insignificant short-term benefit to this project. And it is, I think it's a very good outcome for the city. And I don't want to forget about the town, because we can't just ignore the fact that, all of this land that Vantage is doing their project on was in the town, and some of it still is in the town. And if you recall, back in 2024, we did make an agreement with the town. And I think that agreement was very beneficial to the town. And why did the city make the agreement? Because we knew unless an end user would take up these obligations that we agreed to, we wouldn't have a deal. And Vantage is doing that. So one of those things that the town is going to get is $150,000 beginning in January 26 for the next 5 years. Now, consider that is significantly more than what the town was capturing on the property tax revenue for all of this land, okay, on an annual basis. So Vantage is going to pay the town $150,000 for the next 5 years, and then also the extension of water and sewer into the Cannellsville area of the town, which is a very big benefit to the town. So all the people, the property owners in that area will have that benefit of city water and sewer. And the final thing, it's not listed on my slide, that I'll talk about that the mayor touched on is extending the water and sewer out to the project site opens up all kinds of other areas for development, which otherwise would come at a cost to that developer or to the city, which again, Vantage is paying for. So that's all I have. I wanted to walk through the highlights and especially explain the structure of the deal so the public understands it. And like the mayor said, this draft will be available for review.
Chris, two things I just wanted to point out really quickly. First, under the town, very proud that you pronounced Cannellsville correctly.
Thank you.
Most people keep the K silent. And secondly, I don't know what went into the negotiations or how tough that was or the give and take, but I just wanted to state for myself that I am very pleased with the outcome. Had we not had any sort of tax impact or revenue impact as a city, I don't think I would have been comfortable signing anything for this. So the $120 million in valuation coming on board right away is a really important piece for us, and I appreciate that very much. As well as just want to say thank you to the consultants and the teams who've been working very diligently behind all this. It's a very good example of the duck principle, which is duck looks like it's just quietly moving along the still pond, but underneath it's paddling very, very hard. And you guys did a nice job representing our needs and our expectations as we had laid them out up front. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Council, any other questions for clarification or pieces for them? Mr. Benning?
Yeah, I think and I'm going to speak for the council here a little bit, but I think that we've all spent a lot of time, not just in closed session or open session, but a lot of time reviewing documents and trying to understand this. And I too would echo what the mayor said to the team of consultants that we brought on board, again, at no cost to the city. They've done a phenomenal job of protecting us as a council, but protecting us as citizens of the community. I think this is going to be a phenomenal development. It's going to take some time to get there. Between the things we've done with zoning, the things we put into this developers agreement, and the work that the Plan Commission will have coming up very quickly on the site plan and operational plan and things like that. I think everybody's up to the task, and we're going to have a good project here. Again, there's going to be hiccups along the way, but I think we're in much better position than what you read in the newspapers or on TV about Foxconn, and we've learned an awful lot of lessons, thanks to Chris and folks around that. So looking forward to this. If people have questions, please go out to the city website, read through there. That is the source of truth. What gets posted on social media isn't always the source of truth, but any of us on the council are open to questions and things like that, so as well as city staff. Thanks.
Alderman Benning, any other questions, concerns, or clarifications?
Just one last thing I'd like to say. I'd like to thank you, Mayor, for saying publicly and on the record how important that $120 million staying out of the TID was, because now the Vantage team who's listening knows that I wasn't lying in the negotiation, that was extremely important to the council.
Yeah, and thank you, Chris. And there was one other piece that I had failed to mention in my presentation. There was a lot of conversation of like, can you have the fire and police safety center paid for by them? Can they pay for this? Can they pay for this? Statutorily, Chris, can you walk through us, why we couldn't include existing or, fire, like the buildings, municipal buildings into a TID?
Well, first of all, there's a prohibition under state law of using TID revenues to create public buildings. So we have that barrier. Second, as you mentioned earlier, Mayor, that we have this special legislation that exempts this TID from that 12% rule, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but there's a provision in that law that says any project costs have to be related to a data center development. So there's definitely some legal barriers there. The hope is, with some of these things we mentioned, that going forward, Port Washington will be in a better fiscal position than they are.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to just reinforce one more time, this council listens when people come, and we just can't necessarily respond immediately. We do the diligence, and we literally looked into just about everything everyone asked. So thank you very, very much. And then with that, we're going to move into just a reminder for everyone in the community that August 19th, there will be potential action on there. This is a draft. It is still being discussed. So this is not the final form, but please take a review of it. Submit any questions you had, like Alderman Benning said, to our website and the email address that's provided there, and then we'll get those FAQs answered. So with that moves us into officer and staff reports for the month. Council, you received a great report again from the city administrator and the team. There's one request that I have out of the memo. Mark Emanuelson, our finance director, had put together he's putting together a 10-year financial plan. And Alderman Benning, Postel, and Pleitner, you said on the GGF, I have a request for you. So at the state level, what the state of Wisconsin does is they create what's called a cost of continuance memo. And what that is it's a line by line of if we did everything in 2026 like we did in 2025 and there's a crossover, it shows the inflationary increases for that, and it just shows like all of those costs. So, and it pulls out like capital and one-time purchases. I think that I would appreciate that. I think the council would appreciate a memo like that. And I did talk to Mark about it, but after reviewing the packet here, I just thought that would be really helpful for us as a community, for people to understand, like, where do their tax dollars go? What is it for? Why are we pushing for development of significant nature? Okay. But any other questions, concerns, or comments out of the staff packet? Again, John Crane should be a professional photographer with those drone photos that he takes for us. That brings us into agenda item 8 from city boards and commissions. From the Board of Public Works, tonight we're going to hear a presentation on the facilities assessment and needs analysis for the Municipal Service Center located at 333 North Moore Road. Is it CUNY Architects? Sir, you have 30 seconds for this presentation. We have to annex half of the planet this evening, and I'm just kidding. Take your time, and we'll ask our questions there. So, Rob.
Okay, tonight with us, we have John Wellenkamp of Keeney Architects, and just over a year ago, the city hired Keeney to perform a facility condition assessment of our facility, and we know already before John walked through the building that it has some significant deficiencies that we're trying to address, not only in the structure of the building itself, but really the way it flows and the way it accommodates our vehicles is not consistent with our needs for a modern fleet serving the city. So I won't take up too much time doing the introduction. I'll let John get into the report. He made this last month at our Board of Public Works meeting, but I just wanted him to go through it with council and what he's come up with, again, to meet the city's needs for the next 25 to 40 years.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Quick introduction of myself. 35 years of doing this type of work for CUNY Architects. I am proud to say I grew up in Port Washington, graduated in 1984. lived on Grand and High, and probably walked by this site every day of the week going to school. So bringing a little history back.
Wait a minute. How did you walk to school if you walk? Oh, you walked past
We
that.
actually took the railroad
oh, you
tracks to
snuck
Thomas
down
Jefferson.
and then you went across the creek.
Well, we took the railroad track, so.
You and Earl Gann, or who
Well,
did you want?
we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
Little bit of background. The facility was last remodeled starting in about 2000, 2005, completed. And at that time, that remodel took into account the existing building that was there. And pretty much that was the last addition. The thing in 2000, early 2000, they reused everything that was there. We were hired to take a look at that. Our goal was to take it to the next 25 years. They did a very good job analyzing the building, working the building, maintaining the building. Pretty much what you're going to find in the main building is things that start going out after 20, 25 years with the roofing, HVAC, the masonry. They've hit life cycles. That's really the big thing. The next big finding that we found there is equipment has just changed so drastically in the last 25 years that that's really the major piece that really sees a need in this building. As we're going through that, you'll see we're able to reuse 100% of that existing main facility on our plan that we're presenting. Bottom line is the stalls need to be properly sized for the vehicles that have to fit in them. If you go down there today after a snow event, or you'll see vehicles are jammed in there just to get them in there. They don't have the proper clearances around them to do safety checks, things like that. So they do the safety checks, but sometimes they got to leave the stall, go. All that stuff takes time and you lose efficiency. So really what we end up talking about is the efficiencies you're going to gain by implementing a new addition to the facility. And really just growth in general. As the city grows, as you take on more tasks to do within the city, you add vehicles, pieces, have to fit. And ideally, you want to put those assets under roof. The more you can put every asset under roof, it's going to prolong the length of how long you can have that piece of equipment. The staff area, we looked at it, pretty much all works well. The restrooms, offices, things like that are all good size. We'd just be doing some refreshing of painting, things like that in the program, but really no addition to square footage relating to staff areas. The process we did is a process we've been using for quite a few years with other municipalities. And what we'll say is they're pretty much industry standards that we use to help determine what you need. So we get the entire asset list, and that's all from a rolling stock down to a shovel to a weed whacker. We are looking at every piece because every piece needs to fit at a certain spot in the building. So literally looking at all that. We're looking at staffing from full-time staffing to part-time staffing to any future projections to make sure we have the right space for staffing. Vehicle equivalency, what that is a Ford F-150 pickup truck requires different maintenance than a grader or a loader. So what it is we look at all those equivalencies to determine what size maintenance bays we need and how we want to facilitate. So as if I get into the plan, you'll see part of the maintenance is one of the areas we need to improve. That's why. We've kind of looked at the assets as things have changed in sizes, you need more space. All this was done with working with staff multiple times to perfect really what's needed, and us challenging staff challenged us to make sure we had the right things when we presented it. The existing site, north is to the right, skate park is to the bottom side. The site pretty late has got a salt sand structure in upper left. In the middle is unfortunately right in the middle, an existing storage facility, which is pretty much a pole barn construction. So it's probably next to the sand salt structure, the least valuable asset cost-wise on the site. Upper right is a mix of what we call the residential site area, drive-through area, yard waste, where public and also staff with large vehicles mix. And that's an important piece when we get into that, because one of the major pieces we see that this site will allow is to kind of segregate that piece on the site. High-level review of what we propose, starting in the upper left, that salt sand structure we're going to take down. The cold storage building that's right in the middle of the site, it would come down. The borderline of the red is what we're proposing as the master plan of the new building. And in the bottom right is another small addition to the north side of Forestry. The yellow is really circumferencing the site. The two upper yellow pieces are kind of built into the hill, and that would be a new salt sand structure and the long narrow thing is aggregate bins like topsoil, gravel, patch, things like that are needed throughout the city. And in the bottom right is what we call a new residential drop site, which would be only accessible off of Moore for residents to come in from the gate on the right, loop through, and exit on the gate on the left. They cannot get back into the yard. It really helps secure getting them away from city vehicles. City staff still would have access from the north, the top side of that through a gate or the south side through a gate. So city, when they're removing the brush and things like that, they have direct access back to their yard. The other piece we'd be doing is in the bottom left. That gate currently is on the west end of the facility. So right now, anybody can drive up and knock on the mechanic's door. So really, we're pushing that forward so it helps secure the site. Upper left is just a high-level snapshot of the areas that would be taken up. The building, I'll get in further detail, but the yellow that you're seeing on here is bordering the existing footprint. Any of the darker colors, the blue and the orange, are new or remodeled spaces. So the top side is the main vehicle parking garage, which is about 33,000 square feet. An independent wash bay, which is designed specifically just for washing vehicles. Right now, their wash bay, if you've been down there, it's kind of part of the drive axle aisle. That would also serve as the main exhaust section of the building, so we're pulling all warm air through the wet environment and out. The blue is the new vehicle repair bays, and the bottom right would be the addition to the forestry shop area. This is supposed to play. I'll talk as we kind of go through this area here. So this is the east elevation, which is facing Moore. Really, nothing's going to change on that facade except the very far end. When you see the building components, they will eventually match architecturally in there. Our plan was more so to kind of get the space needs, what needs to be. But architecturally, some mansard roofs, some things like that would tie that structure in on the very north end of Forestry. So we're heading north. The first addition piece you'll see is that flat roof section there. On the left-hand side, you're seeing the residential drop site, and as we leave the site later on, you'll get a visual. But that's a self-contained area for residents. The addition is to the left. We're approaching what we call the new salt sand structure. Now, all these buildings, when you're looking this way, would actually be in the topography of the hill. The left side of the building here is a 5,000 square foot additional storage space that we recommend as a need to get additional product off the site. Trailers, all different implement attachments, things like that could go stack in this section of the building. As we loop around now, we're looking south. We're going to head and be looking at the existing maintenance bay doors on the far right. The three doors here, the first door we're going through is a storage area. And as we walk through the wall, the one big thing that's lacking in the fabrication shop is the size of the fabrication shop. When it was originally designed 20 years ago, everything was smaller. It's tucked under a mezzanine. It's there's a better use for that, so we're kind of creating parts there and creating a whole different fabrication area within the shop. All these new shops have direct access drive into the vehicle storage. So we just entered the new vehicle storage. On the left-hand wall, that's that overflow storage I talked about. As we're looking north, That's the main drive door that you would enter this facility. There'd be a storage mezzanine on the left, which is 3,000 square foot of shops. And then there's the wash bay. Like I said, it's open to the main vehicle parking bay. Mezzanine would have additional storage. So there's a lot of storage needs. So like I said, we've analyzed all the equipment and where it needs to go. That's square footage that would be needed for additional storage. And that storage is what we call long-term storage. So it's not used every day. Christmas decorations, things like that that can be stored up there that maybe once or twice a year. This is the existing garage. You'll see in the upper right, you'll see some white trusses. We do need to raise the roof there to blend in with the existing, the new proposed roof. That is one of the roof areas that have been allocated in the CI, capital improvement project to be replaced for the roofing. So it's due to be done. So pretty much we're taking advantage of that. This is the forestry wing, so this is on the east side of the property. And then here's your residential drop. So you got all different bins for different materials that residents would drop. That would be entered through a card key system that residents would get and secure, so you can determine when they can come and go. So analyzing the project, the program, so the building square footage, everything you saw building related is the 9.5 million to 9.8 million. And then the total project cost is 13.8 to 16 million. And the difference between those two numbers is the total project cost has literally everything in it, like site work, salt structure, the extra storage facility, professional fees, contingencies. So that chart, if you get the packet, once you get the final report, that'll kind of have a laundry list. That's the image on the right-hand side, literally everything that would cover the project for permit fees that would be needed for financially paying for the project. Why? The big thing is to me, it fits right in line with the project that was done almost 25 years ago, that you're going to the next phase of growth. Really, a couple things is you want to start looking at how you can separate the residential coming into with the larger trucks. And really, the big thing is the gaining efficiencies. Our goal is something like this can help through efficiency, help pay for itself through efficiencies. You improve maintenance. That's not saying maintenance hasn't, but the more we can keep up on bettering the floor systems that's down there to bring it current, it's easier to clean, easier to maintain, the trench drains, everything. That's less time employees have to be doing a task that really isn't part of what working in the field is. We looked at usable square footage. In the current building right now, there's some square footage just because of the vehicles are so large that we're getting underutilized. We're able to change that up and actually have every square footage in the building utilized. As you know, as all projects you've looked at, the longer we don't do something, costs just increase. And really, it's just getting the facility in current day to meet current standards and really for the employees, for safety and for the environment. I went through that fairly quickly. I have additional supporting slides if there's questions, but really, it's really to get you up to date to where we're at today, and then make sure if there's something you want to see, we can come back at a later date and get you additional information. Thank you.
Any questions for clarification or members of Public Works who want to comment?
I do have
Oh,
several.
hold on a second.
Oh,
Mary Lou beat you to it.
I was going to let her ask a question.
Okay.
Mary Lou was first.
Mary Lou, yeah.
So in the original slide, when we saw it, I told you that I really liked the residential drop-off area, and it is very close to the street then. And there are currently are huge mounds of waste in the back. So when this is brought forward for the residential area, right, go back to the other slide, the first. Yes, that one. So I can see now that you have, because we didn't see this slide previously, the new yard waste. So what I think I'm hearing from you is that there's not going to be these huge mounds in front by the street. They're going to be smaller mounds, and they will be then brought back or to another site afterwards. That's the intent, or am I making things up now?
Nope. What will happen is if residents drop in where it says new residential drop site, as they drop in that, I'm going to say the top side of the bin near that gate, they'll mound up whatever for a week's worth of debris. Staff will then take that debris on closed hours and bring it to the back where it says new yard waste. So really, we wanted to keep that handling very adjacent to that space, but then give enough dumping area for residents to dump.
So it'll remain pretty in front.
Yes.
Thank
Yep.
you.
And really, a layout like this is in multiple areas where it has proven success. Because some people worry, well, where is the queuing of the cars coming? Having a facility like this allows residents to drop at a wider range of time, so you don't have that congestion just naturally opening up more time.
Alderperson Postle.
You have listed in here internal communications network to the following areas: the yard, the vehicle storage, offices, shops, and wash bay. Could you expound on that a little bit? What does that look like?
Which piece were you looking at, ma'am? I'm sorry.
It says communication requirements specifically, internal communication network to the
Okay.
following areas: the yard, vehicle storage, et cetera. What does that look like?
Yeah,
What is that?
what that's really saying is just communications, like internal speakers. So if they want to communicate to somebody back in the shop, there's radio communications. Yeah,
Radio and PA system.
yep.
Okay. I also have a couple more questions. JD, you were kind enough to give me a tour of the facility. You do have some challenges. I can certainly appreciate that. You had on here a forecasted number of employees at 30. Did you work with HR administration, or what was your rationale for coming to that number of employees?
Yeah. Oh,
I think that probably has to do with like during the summer with seasonal employees too. Full-time staff in that building is 14, but then John Crane probably has 10 seasonal, and then I have 2. So that's fully staffed during the summer is what I'm guessing that is.
Okay, so it was not in addition to staff? It's
No, I don't
roughly
think
what
we're
you
looking to
might-
double the amount of full-time employees we have down there.
Okay. All right, then my last question
Can I just
is-
interject?
Yeah,
Not yet.
not yet.
Not yet.
And again, this has been a really classic symptom of what our city has done in the past. We build for what we want now, not what we need in the future. So
Future.
that this has that capacity, I appreciate. I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's, go
Yeah.
ahead, I'm sorry.
Actually, that's a really good segue. On a personal level, I recently went through what's called death cleansing. Anything in my house that I had not used in 3 or more years, it's gone. I have not missed it. I looked through the list of all of the equipment that you have. Do you absolutely have to keep everything, or are there things in there that you could evaluate and actually get rid of to free up even more space?
I know since I've taken over, we've done quite a bit of like house cleaning of things that like we haven't really used. But yeah, I mean, as far as the equipment that we have, we use every single piece of equipment. Again, I mean, we don't use it all year round. Some of it is very seasonal. But yeah, I mean, the crack filler, the asphalt roller, the paver that we use from the county, every single one of our trucks, especially in winter, we don't have a single spare truck to plow a road. If something breaks down on any of our road routes, we expand our routes. We don't have any extra trucks for that. So yeah, we don't really have any equipment that we can get rid of per se. Yeah.
Alderman Attorney?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. We had, and this was before Mary Lou joined Public Works, but we had taken a tour out there. JD had run most of us on Public Works through there. And a couple of things, and maybe JD, you might want to address some of this, that the concerns that are taking care of this was that right now, if you go out there, the lot isn't paved for the most part. It's just gravel and that type of thing. So part of this plan would pave the entire lot. And I was concerned about the overhead in a lot of spaces because you can just see the trucks are right up against the top, and if they're trying to do any work when they were lifting things on jacks or anything, there's just no room. So this plan also takes care of that. It seems like the overhead is taken care of and they won't be banging off the tops anymore.
Yeah, just like like the cleanliness thing. Like to me, that's one thing that really bothers me. Whether it's very wet, we get a lot of rain. Okay, well then the whole backyard is gravel, so everything sticks to the tires. And then you drive around and you bring that in the building, and then it tracks on your boots. And now our break rooms are dirty, so you can't keep anything clean. And then on the other end of the spectrum, if it's very, very dry, well, the back is gravel. So you drive through the back, kicks up the dust that goes into our air handling units and into the building. So it is very, very difficult for us to keep anything clean. And I'm a very clean and organized person, and that it really affects the work because there's constantly a mess. So yeah, this would address a lot of those things to just help us be organized and clean. So,
Mr. Benning.
So JD, and I don't know, JD or Rob, whoever, I know it makes reference to other departments in here. Talk to me about, wastewater and water equipment and people. Are we moving, if we go forwards with this, have we built in capacity to move it out of those facilities into this facility because we're tight on those, that type of thing?
So we do store already some of like wastewater owns our jet rotor and a utility truck. Those are already stored at ours. Like the excavator split between the water, wastewater, and streets. That's at our facility. The water department's backhoe is at our facility. The water department used to own a tandem, which now streets will own. That's stored at our facility. And yeah, we will have, and Dennis Cherney has room at our facility right now. So yeah, there would be a room to store some of their equipment. I don't know if we're moving manpower up there, but we would have room to store some of their equipment.
Okay.
Yes.
Additional to what you're already storing potentially?
Yes.
Is that factored into the analysis or?
We have all like the current stuff, but I think there's like 6 additional empty bays for future growth. So there is the possibility that if we did need to store a truck or a skid loader at our facility, that there would be room.
Okay. The other question I have is, have you guys had discussion, and probably this is more a Rob question. We have a lot of vehicles across the city and they all need to have oil changed every so often and other maintenance types of things, as well as major repairs. And right now, I think each department goes wherever to do those kind of things. Have we seriously looked at insourcing that? I mean, if we, again, you'd need the additional bays. You understand you probably need at least another mechanic, if not 2. Have we looked at that, and is that factored into this as well?
No, but I think that's definitely a possibility. That's like the one concern. That's what part of having the additional bays. One of our biggest concerns right now is we have 3 bays. One of them has a lift, so that's kind of like a oil change. That's dedicated. The other one has the overhead crane, so we really have just like one bay that if something needs to be worked on for a long time. So like in the winter, we'll pull a sweeper in and we'll work on it for a month. We'll just totally rehabilitate it, get it ready. But in winter, like if we have like a major breakdown where like it's going to take like 2 or 3 weeks, we are very, very tight because we're going to have one bay dedicated to that, one for an oil change. And now if you have a breakdown during a storm, we're worried that we don't have enough room to get these repairs done. But yeah, I mean, I could say right now we could have a second mechanic. There's enough work for that. And especially if you want to help out other departments, we're actually working with Joe. I know Mike, our mechanic, reached out because we're going to be doing some maintenance on the fire apparatuses. We'll just pull them in and do like a DOT inspection and just give them like a once over. So that's already started. We don't really do any work on any of the police vehicles, but I mean, that is something that could be looked at.
I mean, rotating tires and changing oil is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and we do that for like the wastewater and
Right.
water department, marina. So,
Right.
and some of that's already being done.
It just seems like we'd be better off bringing that in. And again, I know you need the space to do it and the bodies.
And the manpower, because a lot of times during the summer, like our mechanic is actually out on the road.
Yeah, right.
He's not a full-time, in winter, yes, but in summer, he's not really a full-time mechanic because we need him out on the
I
road.
guess I'd like to see, that analysis as part of this to know, if we add 3 bays, is that feasible to do that type of thing? So, thank you.
Any other questions or concerns, clarifications? Yeah, Rob.
Can you give me the cord here?
I think as you're transitioning there, I have a note here. I think the only thing that you could do to improve that digital enhanced video that you had created is if like Gerard Lunzer could drive a 77 Trans Am through there or something. Make it some of the fun things. Got to work Gerard into a meeting at least once a month.
All right, I'll make this a little bigger. And so, my apologies. The report that is in your council was sent to Susan right before I went on vacation, and I'm just noticing now that what is in your packet is one version out of sync, and so so I've emailed it to all of you. So I want to go over a little bit the cost. Nobody's brought that up. We're not here to necessarily talk about it, but I want to make sure that it's clear that the cost of all of these upgrades are estimated by John, who does a lot of these, at, can you see that okay? That's $15 million for these upgrades on the low end and approximately $16 million on the high end. That includes the construction costs up here, which are between 9.4 and 9.7 million dollars. And then these are the soft costs in here, adding up to another $5 to $6 million. What's in your packet was I had asked John to provide an analysis of the, Mary Lou always asked, what's the do nothing cost? And so we had a do nothing, what are we going to spend if we do nothing? John had that in the original draft. I challenged him on a lot of those things. And so the do nothing cost means essentially repairing the roof and some other things and essentially limping by. And so he has that down at 1.9 to 2.3 that we would have to spend probably in the next 5 years just to keep our building up to, keep the rain off of our heads inside the building. So really, that's where it is in terms of, do nothing. But in order to make these improvements, this, of course, very important spreadsheet was not in that original draft. And so that is the cost for these improvements here. And so if there's any confusion, I apologize for that. And then John also there's the wait 5 years down here. And so he is essentially forecasting inflation of 3.9%. I don't know if anyone knows, but so in 5 years, of course, those numbers go up to 18.5 to 19.5 to make these modifications to the facility that John went over tonight.
Thank you, Rob. Just as last steps before we move on into the rest of the agenda this evening, just a request that I ask every time we do a potential project like this and that is if you can do a forecasted scheduled maintenance plan for us. So, like we hit the expected life cycle of the roofs at 50 years and the masonry at 60 years and all those different pieces. So just a look forward of the 25 years of window replacements, door replacements, stuff like that, so that GGF and all the committees have that. Board of Public Works can just operate off of it, and then we can forecast those budgets.
Yeah, the good news is the building's not falling apart. It's regular, routine roof replacement, and that's why we're able to reuse the majority of the building. We're really not knocking anything down but the pole barn.
And opening up the door so everything fits.
A
Okay,
little bigger door.
all right. Okay, any other pieces there? Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Go Pirates. Okay, that brings us into agenda item 8B1, public hearing to consider a conditional use grant request by TCG Holdings 116 LLC for a proposed recording studio located at 691 South Park Street. Notice was hereby given that the public hearing was going to be held this evening at 6:30 or 8:15. Notice is further given that the subject of the hearing is to consider a conditional use grant request by TCG Holdings 116 LLC for a proposed recording studio located at 691 South Park Street. Interested persons were sent this information. I am going to call this hearing to order. Is there any speakers in favor? Are there any speakers in favor? All right, Will, would you like to speak on this now or when it's your agenda item? You can do both.
Yeah, we can speak on it now. So
All right, let's do it.
excellent. So I just wanted to introduce myself. So my name is Will Frang. I'm the owner of Park Street Studio. Park Street Studio is a recording studio on the west side of Port in the Business Barns. Our mission is to encourage and foster great art, and that's really woven deeply into the fabric of Port Washington. So I'm seeking conditional use approval on the studio and happy to answer any questions.
At the public hearing part, we don't address any questions. It's just the public's opportunity to weigh in on if they want the project or not. So we'll get to that in the next agenda item. Are there any speakers against the project? Any speakers against? Any speakers against? This hearing is closed. That brings us to the next agenda item, which is a subject conditional use grant and a consideration of possible action on the request for a conditional use grant and land covenant for the operations of a recording studio at 691 South Park Street. The issue is, should the Common Council approve a conditional use grant for the operations of a recording studio located at 691 South Park Street? Staff has a recommendation, which I am going to let Mr. Harris share with us. Mr. Harris.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will do that. Eric, if you want to get me onto the Air Media. Put just one slide only, up for you. Okay, so the council may recall last year that it amended the city's zoning code to allow recording studios as a conditional use in its industrial zoning district, I-1 specifically. And the impetus for that was for a proposal by Will and his group to construct a new recording studio building on the west side of South Park Street, directly across from the existing Port Washington Business Barn condominium complex. That was approved, as was its conditional use prior to it getting constructed. So this conditional use is actually for a companion studio in the existing Business Barn complex, and the location is highlighted on that slide. And so this conditional use, it'll allow for the traditional recording studio uses, studio recording and audio and visual. There is another component to the conditional use request, and that is for video recording using a live studio audiences, just for live image videos. And so that's the component that, opens up a little more issues and codes rather beyond just the traditional small studio recording that's baked into this conditional use as well. And so when the Plan Commission reviewed this at its meeting in June, it did recommend approval to the conditional use, and the conditions attached to that primarily reflect kind of that live studio audience recording component. And as part of that approval, the conditions attached for this was that no performance or concerts, conducted for the general public, i.e. it's not a concert hall. Not more than 4 studio audience performances for filming purposes per month. and that's subject to a city parking plan approval. Hours of operation are by appointment only. Meeting of all required fire and life safety codes, and then a plan commission review of any of the conditional use grant 12 months following any approval, just to measure the activity there, if there's any issues, and then it can continue in perpetuity. That is the plan commission recommendation, and that is the same as staff recommendation. And just a reminder to the council, when approving a conditional use, there are 3 standards really to keep in mind. And this is, coming out of state statutes, is that the conditions applied to a conditional use grant, they must be reasonable and to the extent practical and measurable. Relatedly, the council cannot base a conditional use permit decision on personal preference or speculation. Such speculation or general arguments for or against cannot be taken into consideration unless tied to those reasonable and measurable conditions applied. Lastly, if an applicant meets or agrees to meet all the conditions specified in the conditional use, it then must be granted. And with that, Will is here representing the applicants, and open it up for any questions the council may have.
This was thoroughly reviewed at Planning Commission, so if there's any questions. Otherwise, is there someone yep, Ms. Postle?
You've piqued my curiosity. What types of customers do you have in a recording studio like this?
So generally it's for groups like bands, and then it's also for singer-songwriters. We also accommodate commercial uses, so people who record music for commercials, broadcasting, and sync licensing opportunities.
So if I show up and want to play death metal on my clarinet, I can record it?
I think we can do that, yeah.
Sweet.
I'm pretty certain we'd all come watch. Actually, you can see Will's work on YouTube. It's very impressive what goes on there. Bob and I had toured his current facility last summer, and it's very cool.
Thank you.
Does that mean you're willing to make a motion to accept the conditional use grant there?
I will move to
Oh, I'm
accept
sorry.
the conditional
All
use.
right.
Oh, you did?
Oh, no, there's a motion. Do you have a question?
I have a lot of questions, but
Okay, well, that's okay. Is there a second on the motion, and then he can?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded, it is now on the floor.
so Will, I know that one of the conditions on here is to meet all required fire and life safety codes, and I guess between Bob and Will and the chiefs that are here, where do we stand on that? Because that to me is a big one. These weren't designed for having 135 people. And I have a lot of concerns both from parking and safety within the building. So I'm looking for an update on where we stand with meeting the current city codes required for fire and parking.
I'll let, you will kind of tackle that since you met with I think you met with the fire department.
Oh, shoot. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. So we've been in contact with both police and fire at this point. With police, we have an approved parking plan, and with fire, we're in progress currently.
I'm seeing head shaking no. Okay. So I think we've got a real disconnect here between where we're at in those, and that's giving me pause on it right now.
Just because if you look at one of the conditional uses, it is for those live studio recording audiences, we'll need a approved parking plan. So it's a condition of that use, of that studio audience use.
But I got a chief saying we don't have a parking plan.
Yeah, we had one, we were looking at it, and we were asked for some revisions.
It hasn't gone yet to the police department?
No, we'll continue to work with the applicants.
Okay. I guess that just right now gives me pause over not meeting those codes. And I know it's a condition, but I want to make sure that is a priority before we allow these to happen, if we do approve the conditional use.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Harrison, you can provide clarification on this, that a conditional use, he must meet all of those things before he can use the facility for his expectations.
Yeah, the conditional use is essentially a use approval, and then approving the conditional use with the uses that are specified, it allows for the, the studio, the recording sessions, that does not involve a studio audience. And if there was, those conditions are tied to that specific type of activity.
And if he were to violate them, then he would lose the conditional use grant as well, or the conditional use as well as the ability to operate.
That's part of the language.
Okay.
And then the plan commission review would be a year from
Yes.
vote by the council?
Yeah, say if it's approved tonight, and then next August, it'll go to Plan Commission for a 12-month review. And if there's any issues or no issues, they'll respond to that.
Okay.
Good question. So there's a motion and a second on the floor. Are there any other questions on the motion? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No.
Aye.
All right. Oh, Mike. Motion carries.
I'm still here.
Thanks, Mike. All right, that brings us to the next agenda item, which is subject rezoning text consideration and possible action on an ordinance 2025-15, an amendment to section 485-132A of the City of Port Washington zoning code relating to industrial zoning districts referrals to the Design Review Board. City of Port Washington is the first applicant. The issue is should this common council is being asked to review and approve a proposed text amendment to the City of Port Washington zoning code that will refer building applications located in the I-3 Technology Campus District to the Design Review Board. There is no recommendation as this is the first reading of the ordinance only. Mr. Harris.
Sure. So this is a text amendment related to the data center project. As you probably know, building site and operation plans, part of that process is for new buildings or major reconstruction of an existing building prior to a building permit being issued. Those plans should go to the first Design Review Board, which in turn makes a recommendation to the Plan Commission for final approval. In the zoning code, there's a section in the code where it specifies zoning districts that are affected by this referral, i.e., a building and site plan being referred first to the Design Review Board. So at the time, there were only two zoning codes in the city, I-1 and I-2, so it makes those references. With the recent addition of I-3, the I-3 zoning district to accommodate the data center project, it needs to also be specifically referenced in that zoning text to be consistent with the idea of referring building and site plans in industrial districts to the Design Review Board. So it has to we're remaining consistent with that. So all this text amendment is proposing to do is to add I-3 to that part of the zoning code. So it'll read I-1, I-2, and I-3 BSOPs go to a Design Review Board. This was at the Plan Commission and unanimously approved or unanimously recommended for the council to approve.
All right, any questions or clarifications on this? As this is a first reading only, there is no action on it. Mr. Benning?
Bob, do we have to specify I-1, I-2, and I-3, or just say industrial?
To be consistent with how it's written in the zoning code now, I'm just inserting it so we have it in a timely fashion.
Okay.
So all it is just throwing in an I-3 into that part of the text.
Okay.
Good question. Any other clarifying questions? Okay. That then moves us into consideration of possible action on an ordinance for annexation territory to the City of Port Washington. Before I begin, there are 4 total annexation requests tonight and 4 considerations of possible action on rezoning those same lands. I had asked Mr. Harris to be prepared to answer any questions as well as Sam on any of those up front, so that as we go through them individually for actions, we can have the discussion up front on them. Tonight, we are looking at the annexation of 753.1 acres in addition to the City of Port Washington, but with these 4 separate pieces. just for clarification and lack of redundancy, I wanted to bring that discussion up. So I'm going to read the first subject and issue, but if you have questions on any of the other annexation pieces, we'd like to address those all up front.
And
Mr. Harris?
real quick, Mr. Mayor, my planning partner on this project, Sam Schultz, Von Briesen, will be the planner introducing these ordinances.
Okay, so the first consideration is consideration of public, a possible action on ordinance 2025-16 annexing territory to the city of Port Washington, Wisconsin. A petition to annex 203.893 acres from the town of Port Washington to the city of Port Washington and assigning a temporary zoning recommendation for the purpose to accommodate a proposed data center campus generally located on the south side of Lake Drive and east of the Ozaki Interurban Trail. VDC Wisco Realty Investments II LLC is the applicant. The issue is the applicant has asked the Common Council to consider a petition seeking annexation in the city of Port Washington and to provide a corresponding temporary zoning designation of I-3 Technology Campus District to develop a data center campus consisting of approximately 203.8 acres of land currently located in the town of Port Washington. Staff recommendation is nothing at this time because it is a first reading. Sam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. For all of these, as introduced, we are doing the annexation temporary zoning and then immediately considering that permanent zoning. All of these are to I-3. And the order is specific to allow for continuity as they get annexed in. We also have received all of the public interest determinations from DOA, and they have signed off and given us that public determination for all of these. To answer a couple questions, I'll go through the full staff report for the first one, and then it's really the same for all of these, for both that and the zoning. So if you have any questions, just stop me as I read this one. I can jump straight into the zoning one if you'd like me to right after, and then you can take them all if that's easiest, or however you'd like me to do it.
I'll read the zoning one, and then you can jump right into it.
Cool. Sounds good. So, the site is presently comprised of multiple tracts of land located in the town of Port Washington, adjacent to the city, adjacent to the area that you've already annexed earlier this year. The primary uses of the properties are currently agricultural. The petition is to request direct annexation for all of these by unanimous approval, which is slightly different than the previous annexation just due to some technical issues. But all of these are unanimous petitions. The town agreed not to contest any city annexation of the land per development agreement that you all approved earlier in 2025. This is a first reading for all of these, and we'll be back on the 19th with any other issues. The annexation issues at hand are annexation and temporary zoning for the parcels. The city staff recommended assigning temp zoning of I-3 Technology Campus District. And as I said, DOA has reviewed all these petitions for annexation and found that they were all in public interest and meet the primary requirements for annexation, notably contiguity and community sewer capacity. From the sanitary sewer capacity standpoint, most of these are outside the city's sewer boundary area, and the city is currently considering an amendment with Sewer PAC and WDNR. Just yesterday, Sewer PAC's committee level recommended approval of this, so it'll go to the full Sewer PAC board on September 10th. For full consideration of the first sanitary sewer amendment process. The city staff are, for those areas not part of that first amendment process, the city staff and its consultants are currently looking at a secondary process and a secondary amendment to get the rest of the area into the sanitary sewer service area. The comprehensive plan for all of these areas designates them as business park industrial, which you all approved earlier this year for all of the annexation areas that you'll be reviewing tonight. Your strategic plan discusses these as catalyzing development to generate revenue, and the annexation petition will contribute to the development of large-scale data center campus, as we've discussed a lot tonight. The city attorney has reviewed the petition. The lands contained within the petition are subject to the development agreement negotiations that you all discussed earlier. The Plan Commission unanimously recommended approving the annexation and assigning a temporary zoning designation of I-3 Technology Campus District for the subject lands and all the subsequent annexation petitions during its July 17th, 2025 meeting. The Plan Commission heard for public outreach during that meeting, and the Common Council scheduled a public hearing on the matter for August 19th for all of these as well. If approved, the next steps would be permanent rezoning, which you'll just consider in a second. Can I answer any questions regarding the annexations?
Any question on the annexation? Okay. That brings us then into the next agenda item, consideration and possible action on ordinance 2025-17 and ordinance rezoning lands within the city of Port Washington and amending the official zoning map to permanently rezone 203.893 acres of land to I-3 Technology Campus District for the purpose to accommodate a proposed data center campus generally located on the south side of Lake Drive and east of the Ozaki Interurban Trail. VDC Wisco Realty Investments 2 LLC is the applicant. This is the first reading. The applicant petitioned the city to permanently rezone approximately 203.893 acres to I-3 Technology Campus District to develop a multi-building data center campus. The Common Council must review this petition, which relates to the annexation petition for the same land. There is no recommendation at this time. Action would not be taken because this is a first reading. Sam.
So for all of these, the permanent rezoning to I-3, like I just said, they're all part of your comprehensive plan intended for business industrial. So this zoning would comply with that comprehensive plan recommendation. That was amended back in May. Additionally, the city adopted the I-3 zoning district regulations, which include data center specific, campus specific regulations for setbacks, height limits, outdoor lighting, landscaping, and permitted uses. The city staff would review any development within these areas against those regulations. The application continues incorporating the comprehensively planned areas into the city, provides that I-3 framework against which the city staff will review. Since May, Vantage Data Centers took over the project as end users to own and operate the data center campus and have continued the entitlement process by submitting this application. I'll skip over a good portion of this as I've already mentioned of it, but specific language within the city's comprehensive plan consistent with the proposed amendment includes the economic development element. Desired businesses and industries for the city of Port Washington include the following: businesses and industries needing fresh and abundant water sources, including information systems and data processing. For the economic development as well, identify, encourage desirable, such as those noted above, and sustainable businesses and job development. And for the land use element, it acknowledges keeping the business park type land uses as demand warrants. In making its decision, the Common Council shall consider and satisfy themselves to the following: is the proposed rezoning consistent or generally consistent with the future land use recommendations contained within the comprehensive plan and future land use map? Does the zoning meet the intent of the proposed zoning districts, that is single-family zoning for single-family land use? This would be data center zoning for business industrial land use. The strategic plan goals are what I mentioned above. The city attorney reviewed the petition. All these lands are still subject to those development agreement negotiations. The Plan Commission unanimously recommended approval of all the rezonings that you're considering tonight at its July 17th meeting as well. And the Common Council will have a public hearing on the matter at its August 19th meeting. If you all approve this, this is kind of the end for the zoning. So we would move on to building site operation plan applications that would coincide this, if you approve it.
On the 19th,
On the 19th,
where I get to read it all again for the third time.
exactly.
Yeah. Again, I want to thank Mrs. Gatsky for teaching me how to read. Any questions on this? All right, friends. Well, here we go. The next one is agenda item number 6, consideration and possible action on ordinance 2025-18, annexing territory to the city of Port Washington, Wisconsin, a petition to annex 457.193 acres from the town of Port Washington to the city of Port Washington and assigning a temporary zoning recommendation for the purpose to accommodate a proposed data center campus generally located on the north side of Lake Drive, south of Dixie Road, east of the Ozaki Interurban Trail, and west of County Highway LL VDC Wisco Realty Investments 2 LLC is the applicant. This is the first reading. We know the issue, we know the background, and we know the staff recommendation is none because this is a first reading. Sam, anything to add on this property?
Only specific note for this one is the areas north of Lake Drive are not contained within the first round of sanitary sewer amendments, but are included with what the city is planning for the second round of amendments. That's the only difference here compared to the rest of them.
Excellent. All right, and that then brings us to, any questions or concerns on that one? Okay, that brings us to 7, consideration and possible action on ordinance 2025-19 permanently rezoning those 457.193 acres of land to I-3 Technology Campus District for the purpose to accommodate a proposed data center campus generally located on the north side of Lake Drive, south of Dixie Road, east of the Ozaki Interurban Trail, and west of County Highway LL. VDC Wisco Realty Investments 2 LLC is the applicant. This is the first reading, and the issue is should the applicant has petitioned the city for permanently rezoning approximately 457.193 acres to I-3 Technology Campus to develop a multi-building data center campus. Common Council must review the petition, which relates to the annexation petition for the same land. This is the first reading, no action. Sam?
Nothing else to
new?
add on this one. All
Any
good.
questions or concerns on that? That brings us to 8. Annexation, consideration and possible action on ordinance 2025-20, petition to annex 67.85 acres from the town of Port Washington to the city of Port Washington and assigning a temporary zoning recommendation for the purpose to accommodate a proposed data center campus generally located at the southwest intersection of Lake Drive and County Highway LL. VDC Wisco Realty Investments 2 LLC is the applicant. This is the first reading, so there is no action. And the issue is the applicant has asked the city council to consider a petition seeking annexation into the city of Port Washington.
The only thing that I should have mentioned earlier that I thought of while you were reading that is the applicant is still working through annexations, so this batch is not the last that you'll see. They are submitting them essentially as they're closing on all of these properties, so you can expect a few more of these as we finish out 2025.
Great news. Number 9, it is a good problem. Number 9, consideration and possible action on ordinance 2025-21, permanently rezoning 67.85 acres of land to I-3 Technology Campus District for the purpose to accommodate a proposed data center campus generally located at the southwest intersection of Lake Drive and County Highway LL. VDC Wisco Realty 2 LLC is the applicant. This is the first reading. The applicant petitioned the city to permanently rezone approximately 67.85 acres to I-3 Technology Campus to develop a multi-building data center campus. The council must review this petition, which relates to the annexation petition for the same land. There's no recommendation at this time, and this is a first reading. Sam?
Nothing more to add.
Any questions or concerns on that 67.85 acres? Okay, that brings us to 10. Consideration and possible action on ordinance 2025-22, annexing territory to the city of Port Washington, a petition to annex 24.43 acres from the town of Port Washington to the city of Port Washington and assigning a temporary zoning recommendation for the purpose to accommodate a proposed data center campus located at 4237 Highland Drive. VDC Wisco Realty Investments 2 LLC is the applicant. This is the first reading. Common Council is being asked to approve a petition seeking annexation into the city of Port Washington and provide a corresponding temporary zoning designation of I-3 for those 24.43 acres. Sam?
Just like to point out that I stuck through all of this while Chris left early, so, you know, I should get brownie points for that.
Wow. Okay. All right, any questions on that? That brings us to 11 then. Consideration and possible action on ordinance 2025-23, an ordinance rezoning lands within the city of Port Washington and amending the official zoning map to permanently rezone 24.43 acres of land I-3 Technology Campus District 2, or for the purpose to accommodate a proposed data center campus located at 4237 Highland Drive. VDC Wisco Realty Investments 2 is LLC is the applicant. The Common Council is being asked to review and to approve a petition to permanently rezone the subject property I-3 Technology Campus District for the purpose of developing a multi-building data center. Sam?
Last one.
Last one. Any questions from council? Otherwise, just as a reminder for all of us, the next time we get together, there will be a public hearing and review of both of those and then action taken on them to annex those properties. That now brings us into agenda item 10A, consideration and possible action to accept an easement from We Energies for a sanitary sewer through parcels 1605505040001 and parcels 16050064600. Should the city accept an easement from We Energies to allow the installation of a sanitary sewer line extending from South Spring Street to South Park Street through property owned by We Energies? The staff recommends acceptance of the easement. Roger, which I would like to point out lasted longer than anybody.
All right, and I took a poll during the closed session whether I should actually read the easement word for word to finish up the meeting, and
Just remember, council, at any moment, it is never out of order to adjourn.
well, it was a resounding vote of no. So, anyway, this easement is to support our Spring Street sanitary sewer interceptor project, and for the reasons listed in the background discussion. And primarily the existing sanitary interceptor that we have there is not located within an easement, and someone back 50, 60 years ago decided to build a building over it. That's one of the reasons why we want easements, so we can prevent that in the future. So I guess I'll just leave it at that as our discussion. It's been a long haul with We Energies to get this easement, so we do recommend that we accept it.
All right, and thank you for your diligence on this. Any questions or concerns on this? Mr. Benning?
Yeah, Roger, I know you're going under the railroad and is that worked out? Do we need an easement for that as well?
Yes, well, we actually get a permit from the railroad to go through there right away.
Okay.
And get a license.
So we don't need an easement at this point from them? as well?
No, we're good.
Okay, thank you. I'll make a motion that we approve the easement with We Energies.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There is a motion and a second. Any questions or concerns on that motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Mr. Gasper, thank you for sticking with us while you're on your trip. That brings us to 10B, consideration and possible action on an application for the City of Port Washington revolving loan fund for a proposed property purchase of 302 North Franklin Street. MMB Holdings LLC is the applicant. The issue is should the Common Council is being asked to approve an application for $60,000 in a revolving loan fund, or RLF, the request to assist MMB Holdings LLC with the purchase of the 302 North Franklin Street property. Staff recommends approval of the revolving loan fund, and that approval also comes from committee. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a application for the city's revolving loan fund. The applicant is MMB Holdings LLC, and specifically the application is for a $60,000 revolving loan fund for aid in the purchase of 302 North Franklin, which is the former Zing building, and the purpose is to acquire the property and allow for Locally Inspired to move from its present location into this Franklin Street location. As the mayor noted, this was before the city's Community Development Authority meeting on July 21st, and it was a unanimous recommendation to approve the loan request along with the conditions that are attached on, the 5 conditions attached to your memo, and those are also reflective of Ozaki Economic Development's recommended conditions as well. The applicants are here if you have any questions.
Mr. Benning?
I'll move to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or concerns on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations. We're very excited that that building will be occupied, that you will be the owner, because you've done a nice job investing in our community, both of you, so thank you very much. Okay, that then leads us, friends, family, and loved ones, to 10C, consideration and possible action on appointment of successor alcohol agent for GPM Southeast LLC, DBA Restore, and 1100 South Spring Street, and 1605 North Wisconsin Street, the agent being Regina Davinsky. Should the Common Council approve a request from GPM Southeast LLC for the appointment of a successor alcohol agent is the question, and the staff recommends. The city clerk has reviewed the request. Background check has been approved, and approval is recommended as presented. Susan.
From time to time, you have taken up these type of requests from various establishments in the city. They have change of employees, and that includes agents. So this request is coming from this company, and they own the 2 gas stations, one on the north and one on the south side of the city. This agent will represent both stores as manager and agent for the alcohol license. And as the mayor reported, that both the background check for the individual came back as approved, and all the paperwork and fees have been paid. So everything is in order, and I'm recommending approval.
Any questions for Susan? Jonathan?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or concerns on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This time, is there anyone who has any public comments or appearances? Hey, Caleb? Oh, got to turn on the microphone, thank you.
Caleb Tydrick, 4465 Wyler's Way, town of Port Washington. I'm still wondering when we'll actually see any details of the project in terms of concrete numbers, including like water consumption. I know it's been obviously a lot of talk. I say it's too high. You guys say it's not much at all. It's $175 million investment in public infrastructure, so it's not nothing. And I'd like to know if they're paying the same price as homeowners are for that water, or if they'll be negotiating their own rates with the utility. And then energy consumption as well. What kind of rates will We Energies have them paying for that? I assume the city has little to do with that in some regards, but that's certainly concerning considering that the new power generation will probably be footed by most of the region's citizens. And then how many actual permanent jobs will it create? I understand it creates a lot of temporary construction jobs, but that doesn't necessarily benefit the local economy the day it's constructed. And then what are the actual computing systems they'll be using? Again, we've been told, we talk a lot about the antiquated technology of older data centers, but we still don't know what technology this data center will use. And then will they be running any backup generators, especially like methane or diesel, that have some very adverse health impacts on residents potentially? And then I'd just like to say I really hope a bulk of the revenue is used for civil services going forwards, including new areas like maybe public transit of any kind, or something creative and new. I'm concerned a lower property tax could encourage companies to buy people's properties and homes and use them as rental or short-term rentals, which could potentially facilitate people being priced out of the city and the town. And does this help anyone who isn't a landowner? I know schools obviously potentially could help anybody, but I know I went to school with a lot of people who their parents didn't own, they'd rent, or they were lower income. So any sort of property tax doesn't necessarily help them. And I think there's a lack of understanding about potential societal impacts of AI, or at least, what that will look like in the future in terms of jobs and what it really means. And I think the town of Port Washington is still pretty left out of the deal. I know there's $150,000 coming, and they're not just going to pay us for nothing, but at the same time, Canalsville isn't exactly the entirety of the town of Port Washington, and right now it seems like they really received most of the benefits. And I thought it was disappointing that the bike trail might have to be moved after I raised that concern, and
Thank you,
it
Caleb.
seemed like I was told it wouldn't have to be moved. But I'd just like to say one more thing, Ted.
No, we got to close out, but
All right.
here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you to call me because everything that you've asked, we've addressed in the last few weeks. and I'll give you the answers to those questions.
Okay, that
The only things I can't answer is their computing system, AI, et cetera.
That sounds good, Ted. I
Okay,
appreciate
thanks,
it.
friend. Okay, with that, is there any other public comments? Alderwoman Postle?
So moved.
There's a motion to adjourn, and it has been moved and seconded. Any questions or concerns on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Go Pirates.